Everybody thinks you live in a safe society. You go home at night, you think you're safe. There are no safe places.
You can run for a long time.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Shamrock Show, episode 20. Good number to wrap up 2020, I think. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, all that stuff. Appreciate all the support. Just hit 1,000 subscribers on Facebook, facebook.com/Shamrock Show if you're not already one of them. Really appreciate that. Going to give you a little intro before we get into the story. Of course, as always, the podcast brought to you by Beard Octane, beardoctane.com or Beard Octane on social media. Use code Shamrock10 for 10% off. They got all your grooming needs, oils, lotions, brushes, combs, all kinds of stuff, man. It's a really good product, handmade craft stuff. Check out Beard Octane, you'll dig it. Shout out to the law firm of Stephen M. Reck and Scott Camisar. Scott's my guy. And also the Second Chance Gym in Preston, Connecticut. New gym that opened up this year. They've struggled with COVID like everybody else. Great old school boxing gym, whether you want to be a fighter or just drop a couple of those holiday pounds in their new year. You know, everyone's going to be hitting the gym in the next couple of weeks. Get those resolutions in with something a little bit more fun than just walking on the treadmill. Check out the Second Chance Gym, Preston, Connecticut. They're on Facebook. Jody, the owner, is a great dude. Tell him Shamrock sent you. You get a free class. Just stop in, or free workout. Check the gym out. See if it's for you. And there's no contract, man. You can sign up. Go. You can pay daily, weekly. There's all kinds of different packages. Check out Second Chance Gym on Facebook. Tell Jody Shamrock sent you. So this year, I took a break from social media. Those who know me personally will know that I've been off Facebook and Instagram for probably 6 months, which for me is someone I use it a lot and have I do a lot on it and post a lot. And for me, it's just been nice to take a break. I didn't plan on staying off this long, and I don't see myself coming back on too soon. But in the time, with all this free time, I've read a lot of books. I've been someone who I haven't read it, maybe more than a couple of books in the last 10 years, things I got as gifts. But growing up, I was always a reader, and I just really got away from it. So now at night, you get into bed, and instead of scrolling through Facebook and Instagram for an hour or two, I'll rip through 200 pages in a book if I, on an average night, I think. So it's cool, read some really good stuff, some fiction, some nonfiction. And this book, Hell in the Heartland, is one that I just happened upon. The author, Jax Miller, is our guest today. It's a cool book, true crime story, still kind of unsolved. The book itself has a lot of twists and turns and will really have you. There's a lot of tension that builds and there's good payoffs to it. Obviously, we couldn't get into everything in the book, and we got to leave something for you to go read anyway. But I really recommend the book. But there's also, if you're not a reader, there's a documentary it's on HBO Max right now, Hell in the Heartland. Definitely not as good as the book because there's not as much information. But I think that you guys will really enjoy this. Jax is great. She's a great interview. We had a good time talking about herself and how she went. She was a fiction author and got into nonfiction and really kind of became an investigator on this crime, and it unfolded as she was doing the book. So it's really cool. Hope you guys enjoy it. Like I said, share, like, subscribe, check it out. And with no further ado, Shamrock Show episode 20, Jax Miller.
Hey,
Hi.
Hey, what's up? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you perfect. Can you hear me okay?
I can. That's awesome.
I hope you can see. For some reason, the video on me looks... Oh, there it goes. Maybe that's better. It was very bright and pixely, but do I look okay?
No, you're good. You're good. I can see you. I mean, it's a little bright, but,
Okay.
It's because you're a star, right?
Yeah, that's it. There we go. I don't know if that helps.
No, it's good, dude. It's good. I appreciate you taking the time to meet up with me. I saw that you're doing like 1 million podcasts, and you had Dr. Oz this weekend. So busy week for you, yeah?
Oh, it's been exciting though. But no, I'm really excited to be on here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited.
Well, no, it was like I've been on a crazy reading kick this year. Like I like to read, and I took like years where I just didn't read. And then this year I really got back to it, and I grabbed your book, and it was just, I loved it so much. One of the best books I read all year.
Aww.
So I wanted to reach out to you, and it was dope that you agreed to do it.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm really excited, especially anything with the word Shamrock in it. I lived in Ireland for 10 years.
Yeah.
10 years. So I love anything Irish related anyway.
So,
yeah.
Well, so that I didn't know. Where in Ireland did you live?
So first I was in County Kildare,
Yeah.
Then I was in County Meath, so west of Dublin. But my husband was born and raised in Ireland. He's got that brogue and everything.
Yeah, that's cool. So my family, I've been over 5 times. My family on both sides all comes from there. So
Oh
uh,
wow, whereabouts?
my father's family is from the south in Tipperary, and my mother's family is from the north in Belfast and Derry.
Oh, beautiful! All those places I love.
Yeah.
I love Belfast. I love Tipperary.
Yeah, I love Belfast. Belfast is my favorite place to go, man. I really enjoy Belfast, and
Have you ever been to County Antrim to like Giant's Causeway and stuff up in the
yes,
north?
yeah.
It's my
The
favorite.
first time I ever went, I went to Giant's Causeway. I was actually going to ask you about it because when I saw your real name, I know you write under a pen name, and I wouldn't bring it up, but you do mention it in the book, so I wouldn't like try to out you. But you have a very Irish sounding name, so I was going to ask you about
Someone else said I mentioned it in the book. I said I mentioned it in the books. Another podcast said that yesterday. I said I don't remember.
Yeah, you meant like I don't want to get like too ahead of ourselves, but you mentioned when you started getting like those calls, you said that somebody asked for you by real name when
Yeah, no, that did happen. I just didn't realize I put it in the book. I kind of wish I didn't.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I won't out you by real name, but yeah, you did put it in the book. So I was curious about that when I saw it online. What made you choose Jax Miller as a pen name? Every time I go to type you in the computer, I get Jax Teller.
I know. I get that all the time. I look up Jax Miller and I see a picture of what's his name from Sons of Anarchy looking
Yeah.
all fine. I'm like, no, that's not me. No, my former agent, when I first got my first book deal, I was still writing in fiction, and we were talking about Anne O'Donnell, and he's like, it kind of sounds like an old Irish cat lady, which I was like, yeah, Anne O'Donnell really doesn't have a lot of panache to it. So we were thinking of names, and I knew I wanted to do something after my grandmother who helped raise me, and I just adored her. And her last name was Miller, and her first name was Geraldine, but she always wanted to be called Jacqueline. So I said, well, how about Jacqueline Miller? And because unisex sells better, we settled on Jax Miller because it's a unisex name.
No way. That's how that all came about.
That's how it all came about.
That's super interesting. You're like there's a Calvin, what's his name? Calvin Harris. He's like a musician. He did his same thing, but he wanted to be racially ambiguous. So he came out with the name. He's a white guy, but he makes like EDM and dance music. And he was like, yeah,
yes, I know who he is. Yeah.
So that's really interesting, and it's very cool for sure.
A lot of people have different ways of doing it. Like I know Lee Child, he chose the last name Child because he wanted to be between Agatha Christie and another author. And so it was about placement. And I know a lot of people will try to do the middle of the alphabet because when you walk into a store, it's in the center where people normally look. So a lot of it's just marketing stuff. I'm not in the marketing business, but Jax Miller's what stuck.
Well, that's fair. So when it comes to the marketing business, whoever you do have working for you is doing a good job, because I was in the bookstore and I was picking up I haven't had a Kindle yet. I'm not a Kindle person. I like to have a book, but I'm the kind of person, I still was on CDs when people had iPods, and I finally caved and got an iPod once everyone had music on their phone. I was like, no, I want my music, but I like to have my books. So I was in the bookstore and I was grabbing a book. It was actually a book about Northern Ireland. It was kind of about the Troubles and stuff. And there was an end cap and it had your book on it. And the cover was, murder, meth, and 2 missing girls in this burning trailer. I was like, holy shit, this looks dope. And like that was it. The cover and the little subtitle. And I wanted to ask you about that because it seems like in the UK there's a different cover to it, right? Is that
right? And I, it bears noting that they're two totally different publishers, so it would just be natural that they have two different covers. Okay. The families were not thrilled with the American cover, the one with the burning trailer. And I said to them, and I think they now see it, I'm like, guys, this is what sells though.
For sure.
I think a burning trailer, if that were to be done in the UK, a trailer would insinuate the traveling community, gypsies and such. It would connotate something totally different than it would here. And I think America just likes that gut in the punch shock cover, and I thought it was beautiful. I thought that the colors were beautiful, and there's so much that goes into it that you don't realize, like the kind of font, the size of the font, where you put the name, the subtitles, things like this. And believe it or not, I don't have as much to do with it as people think. They showed me the cover. I say yes or no. That's the bottom line. I don't go through photos and pick one I like. It comes to me. And you'd be wise to say yes, because then you're going to just piss everyone off if you say I don't like it. So with the UK one, that one was much more bucolic, and I didn't really I'm not sure if this one's going to do so well, but you know, I think it's just different audiences and different publishers. So
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, obviously the book's doing good. You know, there's obviously a lot of publicity for it everywhere. But yeah, for me, just when I'm in the bookstore and there's just so much to choose from. Like, you know, if you're not looking for something specifically, I wasn't familiar with the case or anything, and I saw it and that cover popped, and you know, made me pick it up, and I read the back, and I was like, yeah, this sounds like a win. So I was surprised when I saw the second cover, and but it makes sense what you're saying for sure. And I didn't realize it was two different publishers either. But the cover was just great. It was eye catching, and luckily, I don't know how the stuff works out, but it was on like an end cap, so it was like I had to walk by it and see it.
yeah. I really love the colors more than anything. I like that, the reds and oranges and purples. I really, really like the color scheme to it.
Yeah, me too. I'm simple. I'm like a shark. I see something shiny and I just go like, oh, you know, what is that? You know, but
Well, I mean, all those fire colors are my favorite colors. I love reds and oranges, so I'm like you. I like it.
so you seems like you've had a really big year. I saw, on a personal level, I saw that you've gone through making a more healthy lifestyle choices and really getting in fit. And that's something for me, that's a constant struggle. I yo-yo up and down, you know, I'm motivated. I'm either like living at the gym and shredded and going crazy, or I'm not leaving my couch for 3 days and eating pizza 3 meals a day. You know what I mean? There's no in between for me.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way, and I don't know what it was. I think soon after COVID started, I saw like some like COVID related ad or something, and they were like, you know, here's a 2-week trial to Noom, and I'd seen about it. You know, it's funny because like I know the science of what it takes to lose weight. I understand calories in, you know, blah blah blah.
Right, it's not rocket science. Yeah,
it's not. It's very simple, yet it's so difficult, and you know, I'm the one who always gets in my way. I kind of get in this fuck it mode, excuse my French. I kind of get in this mood where I'm like, fuck it. And then I just stop doing it and I get in my own way. So Noom really was a lifesaver for me. And it was the only thing that's ever worked because it doesn't focus on the food and the science as much as it focuses on your mind. It uses cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's about changing your behaviors. It's about not getting in your own way. It's about a lifestyle change as opposed to a quick weight loss thing. So it worked for me, and it's the only thing that's ever worked for me. And I feel like this, I've been talking about it so much lately. I should be a spokesperson for Noom at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
This podcast is brought to you by Noom.
have your agent slide in that DM, make him set that up, man. Why not, right?
Yeah, right.
So I know you have 2 fiction books, and I haven't read them, but I know they were really well received, especially your first book. What led you from fiction to, you probably told us a million times, but what led you from fiction to nonfiction?
You know, I'm a person, I like the story. I kind of go where the story goes. I joke around, you know, if Lauren Ashley was based on Mars, I'd be writing a sci-fi. My first book was a kind of a surprise to be published. It was really like an overnight deal. I was an overnight success, you might say. And it was a little bit unprecedented. And then after a while, you know, I think that they both serve 2 different beasts in me. For fiction, it's largely about getting all my junk out, expressing myself, getting out my emotions. It's very cathartic and therapeutic, and partly because I like escaping. It's an escapism. It's like a drug to me. I like getting out of the real world and going over here. So I did that for a while, and then I says, well, let me chase this story. This is a fascinating story. Let me chase this into the true crime genre. And I didn't know it going in, but I soon learned that writing true crime it feeds a very different beast in me. And that's about doing something greater than yourself. You don't have the creativity. You don't have the escapism that's afforded to you in fiction. But I realized that I really loved being a megaphone for people who had a story to tell. I really loved, you know, shining a light on a story that I felt like needed to be told and raising awareness. So they're very different, but I really do love them both. And I'm not finished with either one of them. I still write fiction, but I think I'll be focusing on true crime for the next while.
That's cool. Did you find that the true crime, has this book been more popular than the non fiction books? or no?
Not even close. No,
Really?
the fiction books were much more commercially successful.
Okay.
By all means. Well, and it was really just my first book, Freedom's Child. My second book, Candyland, was only published in French. So yeah, I mean, it was much more successful in fiction, and and people always say, oh, she went into true crime to make money. I says, honey, if I wanted to make money, I might stay in fiction. But I knew that going into it, and it's not because one's better than the other. It's just facts that fiction sells better. It's more marketable than nonfiction. So I knew that going into it, though. I knew that going in, and that was fine because it's not about the money. It's not about the sales. It's really about the story. I love the story.
I'm sure your publishers love hearing that.
I'm kind of known to be a little hard to handle, I think. So.
Yeah. That surprises me. Just because true crime does seem to be like, you'll see the memes like serial killer documentaries and chill. Like, it seems the last few years, people have really like become obsessed with true crime. Making a Murder was so popular, and I've always thought it was cool, but I've never considered myself. This is actually probably my first real true crime book I've read. I've read like some biographies of some criminals and stuff, like things like I've always kind of like to dig into biographies. So, but this book is kind of was out of my norm for me. But since reading it, I started like getting into like some of these true crime podcasts, and it kind of opened up a whole other thing in my interest realm. There's actually one right out of it's called Oklahoma Side. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
They do some cool stories all out of Oklahoma. I was like, Jesus, I didn't know that Oklahoma was basically like the 6th level of hell on earth.
And it's crazy because it's funny because I'm like you. I don't consider myself a true crime buff per se. I really don't. Like, I'm not a murderino. I'm not that person. Again, I'm very much a writer. I'm an artist. I'm not even a journalist. And people are like, they've been calling me words like investigator. I'm like, no, I just write. I like stories. I'm a storyteller to the bone. But Oklahoma, I think so many people who read Hell in the Heartland, they're like, this is a place I never want to go. Or they're going to say, this place sounds so beautiful. And I think it just depends on the person who's reading it. Some people took the negative parts and that's all they read. Yeah. Some people took the positive parts, because as much crime as there is there and these towns with drug problems and stuff like that, it's also very beautiful. You see a lot of close-knit community and family there with traditional values. Beautiful sunsets. I mean, there's so much to love in Oklahoma, and I consider it like a second home. I've really come to love Oklahoma.
Well, you've spent a lot of time out there, yeah. Now at this point, you've become more. You've become such a part of the story, which we'll get into in a minute. But like, you and her mother have become very close, it seems, and like I watched the docuseries, and you're like really you're more than just like, oh hey, I'm writing this story about what I saw. You're in the trenches over there. Yeah
I think for me, my job, I'm a novelist. I'm not a journalist. I think a journalist or a reporter's job is to bring a story to readers. They have to provide you with the story of Laura and Ashley. My job is the opposite. My job is to bring you into the story. So I have to be in Oklahoma to bring you in. I can't write it from a desk across the country and bring you in. I have to be on the ground. I have to eat fried cow testicles. I have to, go pick pecans from the ground and the tarps. Like I have to, I take this one in Rome approach because I don't see another way. What good am I doing if I'm sitting at a desk writing about a place I've never been to? To me, that's never made a lot of sense. So I think it's copped up to personality. That's just who I am. I'm passionate. I'm like zeroed in on whatever it is I'm working on, a little bit obsessive. And, there was no other way. Of course I was going to write it from Oklahoma. And I loved it. It was my first time there, was doing this story. And, I was there last summer. I was supposed to be there this Christmas again. I spent last Christmas there, but just with work and travel and stuff, it's hard this year, but I'll be going there in the new year soon. So I can't wait to go see my friends again.
So you can't just blow by eating a fried cow testicle and like expect me not to
ask
you about this. So what happened now? How did you come to eat a fried cow testicle?
They're called in that part of the world. They're called calf fries, CALF, like calf.
Yeah.
Calf fries. Other places are called Rocky Mountain oysters.
So I
They
heard
have
of that in like, yeah, I've heard of that. I thought they were goat testicles. Not that that's a big difference between goat testicle and
they're probably smaller.
yeah,
I don't
more oyster like.
know.
So who
No,
how
I
like you get out there and someone tells you like, hey, we're gonna try this, or were they like, hey, try this calf fry, and you're like, oh, cool, and then like balls in your mouth.
you know, the shit happens, I guess. No, I think it was Lorene Bible, the mother of Laura Bible, who's heavily featured. Actually ordered them for me. Then you know, she is a prankster. We meet her as this grieving, you know, mother of a missing child. Even though we meet her on that playing field, she is very much a jokester. She prank calls, you know, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So she got me fried cow testicles, and she, you know, she kind of looks at me like, go ahead. And she did the same thing to my husband last summer. I says, I think she ordered him some cow testicles, and they're advertised there, like they eat them regularly. And I tried them, and they're like deep fried. They're smaller than you would think. They're not like big cow testicles. They're I maybe when you cook them they shrivel. I don't know. I don't know the science behind it, but they deep fry it and they serve it with ranch. So you dip it in ranch, you eat it. It's not bad. And then you get to the middle, and it's just like, I can't do it.
Dude, I couldn't mentally. I couldn't do it. I don't think I could get my head. I would have to shoot it down like a shot. Like if anything, like I would have to fucking be able to just be like boom and wash it down, because I don't know that I could knowingly chew a testicle.
I feel like mentally I was okay with it. But I really sincerely just did not like the taste. It tasted very earthy. I don't know how to explain it. It was very earthy and dirt tasting. Like,
well, it's good to know that you really cemented yourself in the culture out there. You know,
well,
that
thank you.
When you read her book, you know you're getting an authentic story. She left no stone unturned.
Please appreciate the fact that I ate cow testicles for this book. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
And where are you? Are you from New York?
I am from New York, born and raised. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but I was listening to one of your other interviews. I was like, oh, we'll just go from Brooklyn. I'm in Connecticut, so I didn't know where you were at.
Yeah, I don't know where the hell I am half the time. And no, I was born and raised in New York, but I've lived all over. I've been everywhere.
How did you end up living in Ireland? That's way off subject, but it's something that's interesting to me. How did you end up in Ireland, and what were you doing there?
My husband's from there. We met online the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
I always wanted to go to Ireland. I always felt drawn to Ireland. My family's, you know, my ancestry, the roots are Irish.
Yeah.
And I never left the country, and I was in my 20s, and you know, and he and I became friendly. It wasn't a romantic thing necessarily, and we became friendly online. We became friends, and he bought me a ticket for Christmas, and it was the nicest thing anyone ever did for me. So I went out there, and I never left. I was supposed to be out there for a week, and that was it. So.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, we just celebrated our 7th or 8th anniversary. I can't remember now.
Did you get married there?
Yeah, we had a beautiful wedding.
So that's how you were able to stay there so long?
No, it wasn't even because of that. I got my visa updated, you know, every year. I had the Garda do it for me every year, so it wasn't a big deal.
Oh, I didn't know how difficult that would be. I figured that it worked the opposite way, but okay.
No, it wasn't hard at all. I think it's harder here in America. So
fair enough. So I want to tell this story, or I want you to tell this story, but I don't think I want to give away the end so much, because I want people to go out and get this book. I kind of want to just get into the crime a little bit and some of the path, but I really wanted to start off with the police department there, because I saw you shared online one of the police who was involved in this got arrested for something else. But when reading this book, you know, it's pretty clear that at best the police were inept, and at worst they were culpable, and somewhere in the middle maybe they were just didn't care. But either way, these two girls go missing for such a period of time that probably shouldn't have happened due to the police force. Like I said, in one way or another, either they were involved, they just didn't care, or they were just too dumb to know what was going on. And before you get into it, my impression of reading it, I just want to make sure is it was like by election, like I would get elected sheriff, and then I just put like my 4 homeboys on as the police station. That's kind of like how it worked. Yeah.
That's exactly it. That's it.
All right. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So back then it was led by, so we're talking about the Craig County Sheriff's Office. This is where the crimes took place. However, the neighboring county is Ottawa County, and that's where most of the suspects were. That's where we believe the girls were taken. So it involves 2 counties. The Craig County Sheriff's Office, you know, and this is just me talking, I personally don't think they were all corrupt. I think it was 1 or 2 bad eggs. You know, I think namely Charlie Cozart. I think he was a bad mofo. I think he sold meth out of the trunk of his car. I think he, you know, he arrested people who didn't deserve to be arrested, planted evidence. He was just a crook and not a nice guy. He's now deceased, but I think he was really the one to blame. I don't think it was necessarily the whole department, but I do think some people were putting their blinders on, the sheriff included. I think they were putting their blinders on to what Charlie was doing. So at that time, I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart. It was led by Vaughn. He had been in politics for like 20 years before that. Again, I'm blanking out. He was a state representative. That's right, since like 1969 up until right before that, and it was a county that had been steeped in corruption prior to that. There's a lot of different things playing up, but a year before, I don't know how into it you want me to get about Shane dying. Do you want me to start there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think it's worth noting that this family, who we're going to get into, has a history with that police department, right? That's I think that's really a valuable piece of the story.
Yeah. So what happened was January 8th, 1999. So early 1999, 17-year-old Shane Freeman is shot and killed by a deputy from the sheriff's office. The family is up in arms. They're beside themselves. They don't believe that this was a justified shooting. And that's based on several things. One of them was Stevie Ray Vaughan came up to the house and said, you know, there was no gun found. Then the story changed to him having a rifle, and then the story changed to him having a pistol. So the family's like, that's not right. You know, this isn't right. There's something wrong here. So they fought for they were going to file a wrongful death suit against the county. They sought the opinion of several lawyers. And what it looks like is that every lawyer was telling the Freeman family, you don't have a case. It looks like it was a justifiable shooting. It was unfortunate, but you know. So Danny Freeman, who was Shane Freeman's father, he started stalking the shooting officer, David Hayes. And David Hayes and or some of the people of the department were harassing Danny back. So it was this tit for tat over the next year. Danny would go there and threaten David Hayes. And then other people from the department would come to their trailer in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night and shine spotlights on their trailer or follow them home. So they were going back and forth. So there was a lot of tension between the county and the Freeman family. And then less than a year later, there's a fire. And here's where Hell in the Heartland begins, where the book begins. On the early morning hours of December 30th, 1999, trailer is found in flames. They find one body. It belongs to 38-year-old Kathy Freeman, and she's the mother of Shane. At first, everyone thought Danny went off the deep end and killed his wife and set the house on fire.
Because everyone watches Lifetime movies and knows that the guy is always the killer, right?
Well, yes, right. and you know what? It's not. I mean, statistically speaking, that's
right. No, for sure. I mean, anything you watch, the boyfriend, the husband, that's always who you want to question, especially when you don't find him.
And especially knowing Danny, he's known to have a temper, like you know, and the cops know him. He's had this. He is a hothead. Everybody knows that. So Danny is gone. Kathy is dead, and also missing is, along with Ashley's best friend Laura Bible, who was sleeping over the night before. So you have these 3 missing people, and Kathy's dead. At this point in time, for the first 24 hours, they didn't know how Kathy died. So that was unsure yet. And at this point, I don't even know if they knew it was a homicide yet. They assumed it was, and they assumed that Danny did it. But, you know, they hadn't had a cause of death yet. So a false tip came in saying, I saw Danny with the girls. He says he's going to hold them hostage and he's not going to give them back until you give him the cop who killed his son, Shane, less than a year before. So that was the initial thing for the first 24 hours.
Did they ever find who gave that tip? Did that ever come
They
out?
know who did it. It's just not public information, but they do know who said it. And so what happened was for the first 24 hours, now, as soon as they found the fire and they realized that this was the Freeman's house, the Craig County Sheriff's Office put their hands up and said, no, we got too much bad blood with this family. Pass it off to the OSBI, the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. So they became the leading agency in charge, was the OSBI. The Craig County Sheriff's Office was then just there to assist. So that's worth noting. The lead agent was a man named Steve Nutter, and he said, let Danny cool off. He's a hothead. Let him cool off and we'll look for the girls in the morning, which is the first ball that was dropped because, anyone knows when you have two missing children or, someone's just killed his wife and burnt the house down and now has these two kids, you go and look for them.
Right.
Let's
give them some time to chill out.
Yeah. Well, and it's just beyond me, but that's what he said. And, he told everyone that, let them cool off. We'll look in the morning. So Laura Bible, 16-year-old Laura Bible, and Ashley was also 16 years old, mind you. So Laura's parents, Jay and Lorene Bible, they're kind of beside themselves. Like, why aren't you looking for the girls? What are you doing to find the girls? So they go the next day to the Freeman residence. Now it's just, it's been reduced to ash. And, they go there hoping to find any clues that can lead to where Danny went with the girls. And within minutes, they find a second body, and police had failed to miss it in the first 24 hours of their investigation. They found the body of their prime suspect, Danny Freeman. He'd been dead, and they realized right away he was shot to death. Everything from the jaw up was missing. And then they said, well, that's how Kathy must have died too. So now you have these two dead parents. They died less than a year after Shane. And now you have these two missing girls. And that's it. That's where we are today. Right. 21 years later. Next week will be 21 years. And it's like, where were the,
Well, it's unbelievable. Because you're talking about a trailer, which is not a huge space to look through, and they've missed a body of an adult man. And I know in your book, I believe it said that there was even like footprints on his chest or on the board above his chest or something like that, where, they stepped right on him. Looked like.
Right. He was intact. He was not reduced to ash. I know that is a lot of people would say, like when I spoke to the agent, Steve Nutter, he's like, oh, well, we missed him because he was nothing but ash. But that wasn't the case, and the autopsy report showed that. And everyone who saw it that day says, no, he was not ash. We knew who he was because of his genitalia. He was face up. The fire had burnt his pants off, so they were able to see. And they said everything was intact. He was missing his hands, and everything from here up was gone. But they knew. They found it within moments. It wasn't like, oh wow, we stumbled upon this after lifting a freezer. No, like it was right there.
So that's the first step you have where. If it was just a kidnapping, you have 24 hours where the person who took them is just gone if they wanted to be. You have 24 hours where these girls could have been looked for, and no one is even lifting a finger because we're going to let Dad chill out because you did a half-assed investigation at the trailer and you think he's got him somewhere, right?
Right. And it wasn't even half-assed. Like there was just no investigation. And, that was just the first. There was a lot of things that went wrong. The girls were not entered into the missing person databases. Yeah. There was an insurance card that was found on the scene that had authorities followed up on it. They would have found the girls because what we know now, and this was stuff that was announced in 2018 after I got there, was the girls were kept alive for several weeks.
Right, and that insurance card had dropped out of the car that left with them. Even the fact that the Bibles were allowed to go to the crime scene the next day, is unbelievable. Like that's if they could have done it, and now they go back and they can take out any evidence. Oh man, I dropped this, I touched that, and now they've been in the crime scene and it's nothing. The fact that they were allowed to go into that is really kind of unbelievable for me. Someone, I just don't know if it's because it's this little backwoods town or whatever. That's my impression of it versus like in a more urban area, but like even if it's just a regular house burned down next to me and there was no bodies in it, I couldn't just go walking through there. The police would have that
Right.
all taped up.
Well, there was no tape, and they were very surprised by that, because they said, well, it's like we went out there at daybreak. We're thinking the SWAT team's going to be there getting ready to get Danny. Like, we thought, the whole brigade was going to be there, and there was not a streamer or anything up. And it was wild, because I understand the Bible's point of view. They're like, they fucked up this scene. We're not going to let them fuck it up again. This is our scene now. They take control. And I get that, especially as a mother, I get that. And with the OSBI, it's like, how do you let that happen? You're right. How do you let a family, it was the family putting evidence markers down. It was the family members going around the property. And then they had 100 people. Then they had 500 people.
Did I lose you? I lost you for a second.
How do you let that happen?
I know.
Oh, sorry.
No, sorry. It just cut out for a second, but it's you're back. I did see in one of your interviews that you had said that you had a whole chapter or something about the town that you wanted to put in that the publisher had you take out. Is that right? Am I accurate in that?
That was the town of Pitcher, which I
later. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, where the girls get
only
found.
because I was fascinated with the area, but they were like, nah, it's too much, which I understand. I really didn't have much, bearing on the story, but it was just fascinating to me.
But can you tell us a little bit just about that whole area of Oklahoma, the drug scene and what was going on, during these times?
So the crimes took place in an area called west of Welch. It's like an unincorporated part outside of Welch, Oklahoma. Welch itself only has about 600 people. It's a ranching town. It's a town where everyone knows everybody. The people who are raised there tend to spend the rest of their lives there. So it's very small town America. It's very quaint. You wouldn't find it unless you got lost, kind of place. And then nearby in Ottawa County, you have Pitcher, Oklahoma. Pitcher comes up because that's where we believe the girls were taken and where they were probably murdered. And it's very possible that that's where they are today. It's also where the killers were from. So Pitcher, Oklahoma is very different, yet it's not, it's maybe half an hour up the road, let's say. And it was a former lead mining town that once had thousands of people. It had 6 movie theaters and all these bars and clubs. It was like a hopping place back in the 20s to the 50s at the peak of the lead mining industry. It was lead and zinc as well. So they used to call it the buckle of America's lead belt. It did not last. There was a lot of undermining, so there was a lot of sinkholes. Buildings started collapsing. Then there started to be a lot of developmental delays in children. It was first seen in children. Everyone started getting sick because they didn't realize the effects of lead poisoning, and that's what was essentially happening. So it had a really severe decline very fast, an economic decline. What you'll see there in these areas are people who refuse to leave. Most of them were bought out by the government at, pennies to the dollar and forced to relocate. Some people stayed for cheap. I think the last resident died in 2017. I remember I was there when he died, not with him, but I was in Oklahoma when he passed away, and it made big news, the last person from Pitcher. It's wild because you go there now and all you see are these white mountains of what's called chat piles. And chat is the remnants of things extracted from the lead, like through ore processing and wet processing and dry processing. They put the wet processing into tailing ponds and they put the dry stuff into these chat piles. So they're supposed to have been bleached and clean, but they're these huge mountains, like football fields wide. They're probably still poisonous if you ask me. I've been up on them a couple times, but I wouldn't hang out there too long. And it's almost apocalyptic looking. It's all the houses are empty and gutted and there's sinkholes and everything's overgrown. It's really creepy. Yeah,
that's really like places like that to me are really attractive in a scary way.
Mm-hmm.
The hills have eyes, or like the house of 1,000 corpses. Like to me, like that's way more scarier. Like just the the leftover society that's kind of been left behind, places like that, you know. I like checking out abandoned places and things like that. So that I think that's really
it's
interesting.
really cool. It's really cool. But back in the day, back when Lauren Ashley were taken, there were still several thousand people there.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as big as it used to be, but it was still, you know, somewhat of a town. So I mean, like there were still stores and things there at the time.
So once they find Danny, I know that there's a small period where they think that the girls maybe could have done this, right? That happened.
That was never an official theory. That was just a lot of rumor and people, you know, having their own theories. You have to remember, for the first 15 years or so, no one really investigated this story. No one really looked for the girls. There were some searches, but they were never done in the name of Lauren Ashley. They never says, let's go look here for Lauren Ashley. You know, they would do random meth busts, and then these meth heads would start saying, hey, I heard something about those girls. And, you know, and it's usually because they're looking at jail time and they're trying to look for a bargaining chip. But there was no real active investigation to look for these girls. Even the private investigators who found that insurance card that would have led to the killers had it been followed up on. Those same PIs, they found the car that was used that night. They found, you know, boxes of evidence that was turned away by the police. The investigation was mostly done by the families, you know, namely Lorene Bible, who has been the one woman investigator. She's been amazing. She's the one meeting suspects in the dirt roads in the middle of the night and turning every stone there is. But the cops really did not investigate this. Not very well.
How did the cops feel to having you out there sticking your nose around?
Oh, they love me. Sure. For the most part, everyone was very cordial with me. I don't know if they were honest with me, but everyone, you know, was nice, I have to say. There was maybe one or two people who made it very clear that I should butt out, but for the most part, people were open about it, and I was surprised by that.
I just didn't know, you know, if the cops at all would kind of shut you down, stonewall you a little bit because you would come out more aggressive. You know, you're really showing up what they're supposed to be doing. There's one thing I know is that people in general don't like to be told that they're doing their job wrong. Never mind police, you know. But
that's not my place. My place is, you know, I'm not there to point out what they did wrong. And I made that a point. I never wanted to, you know, trick them up. I never wanted to trip them up and say, aha, or, but you said this, but then you said, like, I didn't want to be that gotcha kind of person.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big believer where even when I would sit with them and I knew one of them was lying to me, and there were times I knew they were lying to me, and I knew, you know, I think a lot of the times they knew I knew, but I let them lie. You let them lie, because I don't want to be a know-it-all. I don't want to be that person. Go on and lie. Everyone's going to see through it, and they do. Like when I talked to Nutter, and he's like, well, there was no body to be found. It was ash. That's why we missed it. I let him say that because because then I'm going to show you the autopsy reports, you know. So let him lie. And if I say, haha, gotcha, this is what it says in the autopsy, that's not right, he's going to shut the conversation down, isn't he? So let them tell their lies.
Fair enough. So now these girls are missing, you know, they ended up missing still to this day, but there was videotape and Polaroids that other people in this meth community were telling people that were seen, right? Like, I would say as many as 12 people might have seen the girls. Is that, or
yes.
12 people saw the pictures?
So in 2018, they released an affidavit. In that affidavit, they named 12 people who saw the Polaroids. Yeah. The Polaroids came up separately from the talk of the videotape. In the early 2000s, there was a lot of talk about this videotape. It has never been discovered. Does it exist? I think it does. I believe it was made. It did. Right. I'm not sure if it still exists today, but I do believe one was made. I think too many people saw the same thing. It's a little too coincidental. Too many people describe the same thing. It, based on the sources who did see it, I do think it existed. And as far as the Polaroids, that was another thing. I do believe that they existed. Knowing what I know about Phil Welch, and a lot of my research on Phil Welch came after the book, and he liked to take pictures. That was a fact. He liked Polaroids. Yeah. So It's his MO. And yeah, I think I wonder if the Polaroids are out there. I can't help but wonder if some of these people mentioned in the affidavit have them and are hanging on to them as a bargaining chip.
In case they ever get jammed up into something. Yeah.
Right.
So they do come on 3 suspects. 2 of them are not arrested. One of them is arrested currently. Do you think for sure that that's the right guys?
I do think they're the right guys. Yes.
Yeah.
I think the guy they do have, Ronnie Busick.
Yeah.
Or if you want to beep that out, if you don't want me saying the name, sorry.
No, it's
the
fine.
Guy they
it's
do
fine.
Ronnie Busick, I think he was the tag along. I don't think he pulled the trigger. I don't think he did anything. He was probably involved with the rape of the girls, I imagine, and there for the aftermath, but I don't think he was there. I think he was largely a tag along. He's kind of simple. He's a simple man, to put it lightly. His brain is largely mush because of meth use and the fact that he was shot in the head, unrelated to this. And yeah, I think he was a tag along. It's very clear that Phil Welch was the ringleader in this, and Phil Welch was a terrifying, terrifying man.
Yeah, I found him to be a really interesting character in the book, which kind of leads me to the next thing. It became the docuseries, and I felt like they kind of breezed right over those guys kind of in the docuseries. Like it just kind of closed it up. How did the documentary come about?
The documentary was actually based on my book proposal. I had pitched a book proposal to my agent when I was living out in Ireland. My agent was in London.
Yeah.
Actually, I gave the idea to France first. My publishers are in France, and I'll never forget this. I was sitting with the big president of the CEO of the company, and I was telling him this story, and it was a little broken because there was a language barrier there. He was French.
Yeah.
And it took him 15 minutes to realize that this was a true story. He thought I was telling a fiction story. But yeah, I'd given it to my agent, and he said, like, wow, this should be a TV show. I says, yeah, it should. It's really fascinating. And that's where it went from there. I created a lot of decks and pitches and Bibles, and all the things that and treatments that go into making a series. I love, screenwriting and film. So I was already familiar with it. With the process, and I gave it to my former TV agent, my former unscripted agent. So it kind of went from there. It started off as a book, and even though it came first, the book was started first. It just takes longer to make a book,
right?
And that was it.
Well, I definitely thought the documentary was good, but after having read the book, like in most cases, and even when you're talking fiction, the book always trumps the movie. But like to me, it was like if you wrote, Friday the 13th, but you only kind of briefly mentioned Jason at the end, like I thought I thought those guys were really interesting, especially Phil Welch, and but it does kind of reflect on the tone of the book, which is really cool that you give so much shine to these missing girls. It's not just like you didn't start backwards. Like a lot of books will start with like here's Joe Smith and he's the killer and this is what happened. This is his whole life. And your book is not like, oh, hey, let's shine the spotlight on this. I know it's something that you did intentionally. I've heard you talk about it. It's not like, hey, let's blow up this killer real quick. You're like, yo, let's shine these victims and these missing girls, and then we'll tell you who did it. But it's not. The documentary kind of reflects that. I just feel like it did it a little too much, but it's great that it gave so much attention to this case.
Yeah, I think it's different because I didn't have as much control in the documentary.
Right.
There's, and it was my first time in TV. There's always restrictions with budget and time and this and that, and I don't have that control like I do in the book. The book, it's everything is all under my control. So it's very different. It's told very differently. And the truth was, I knew so much more about those men than I put in the book, but I knew going in. And I knew it was the family's wishes too, that this be a story about the girls and not about the killers. And, I think a lot of true crime, and there's nothing really wrong with this. I think that they like the sensationalism. I think that some people do like the macabre and the gory details. And it's not that I don't care for it. I don't think we focus enough on the victim sometimes. And that's what I really wanted to do. I wanted this to be a victim centric book. I wanted it so that when the girls went missing, you felt it in your chest, I wanted I wanted them to be relatable. I wanted people to read this and be like, my God, that could have been my daughter or my sister or whatever. So that's what I tried to do. And a lot of my research actually came after the book, like Phil Welch. I spent this whole summer going to his childhood home and speaking with family members. And I learned so much about him. A lot of it's like, damn it, why didn't I know this during the book when I was writing the book? But again, I'm happy it went the way it did. I'm happy it focused on the girls.
Would you ever consider doing a spin-off book, like kind of the opposite way, like we were talking about, like a Phil Welch book? Is there enough there to do that?
Probably. There probably is. I can't imagine doing it strictly from a business point of view. I can't see that being so marketable. I don't know if it's something that the publishers would be interested in.
Yeah.
But who knows? Who knows? Maybe that's what I'm doing right now.
Oh, so you are working on a true crime thing right now. But what I wanted to add, I know you're not putting anything out about that right now, right? But
no, not right now.
But what I wanted to ask you was, with the publicity that you got these girls, did you have any other like missing children's parents or like any people reach out to you like, hey, my kids are in a situation, or my daughter, my son, blah, 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 similar to this? And, you know, has anyone reached out to you for help like that, since you've really put yourself out there in that way?
It keeps me awake at night. Truly. Hundreds, maybe even thousands at this point. I feel so, I don't know if overwhelms the right word, because that connotates something negative, and I don't see it as negative. I'm very honored that people have reached out to me saying, yes, please help me with this unsolved murder, or, you know, my missing child. And it breaks my heart, because the truth of the matter is I'm only one person.
Right.
It takes me years to write one book about one case. I can't, you know, do it all, and I wish I could. And it breaks my heart, because there's so many stories out there. I wish I can, you know, write a book and shine a light on each and every one of them. But again, I can't. But that's why I think I'm so happy that there exists the true crime community, and that it's so successful right now, so that we can, as a community, highlight these cases, you know. So yeah, keep sharing, guys. Keep sharing, because that's what solves cases, you know, talking about it, not forgetting these missing people and these unsolved murders.
Well, I think kind of like spinning back to the style of it, like whenever you see these school shootings happen, right? Like I could tell you Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold shot up Columbine, but I couldn't tell you anybody who died in Columbine. You know, like here in Connecticut, the kid Adam Lanza shot up the Newtown, the school there. I don't know any of the kids that died, you know, but everything is so much killer focus as opposed to victim focus. So it's probably, you know, really important for people to start telling the stories a little bit differently. I mean, it is important to know how or why these killers operate, maybe to try to stop them in the future, but to have your kid just kind of be a footnote in a story has got to be tough. So I got to imagine how grateful the Bibles are to you for, you know, and I know you dealt also with Danny's father, like people in those families, to see that you're shining them up way more, dude. That's really cool of you.
And that was important to me too, because I mean, this is their story, not mine. And everything they said mattered to me, you know, and so I had to honor their wishes. And, you know, it wasn't like, oh gosh, they want me to write this and I don't want to, like, you know, this was a team effort. But I think you do have to be respectful for the people who are working with you. And, you know, I think they're a little bit unsung in the book, because Lorene and Lisa and the people involved, they worked so hard on this book. They really, really did. They worked with me. So, I mean, kudos to them for being so patient with me, especially. But they really worked hard on this book too.
What was the hardest part of doing this story for you? Was there like any like one fact of the case that really hit you, or just interacting with like what was probably the most gut wrenching? Was it the cow testicle? What was the most gut wrenching part of doing this investigation for you?
There was two times that stick out in the back of my head. We went, I think it was during filming, we went to the Bible house, you know, the grandparents' house, which was kind of like the home base for everyone. And you see the pictures of Laura Bible in her cheerleading uniform all the time. It's on their Facebook page, Find Laura Bible and stuff like that. And Lorene took it out for us. And my daughter at the time was the same age as Laura when Laura disappeared. She was 16. And, something I just started ugly crying. It was just like, oh my God, because suddenly I saw my daughter, and I didn't want to cry on TV, so I went outside. I didn't want people seeing me, and I just like went. I was like, I don't know, something came over me, and I remember walking back in the house, and Lorene looked at me right in the eyes, and she said, "That's okay, I'll have my day." She says, "When I'm over the hole looking down at my daughter's bones, that'll be my day to cry." And it's very hard being around Lorene. And it's not because it's sad. She's so strong. She doesn't cry. And it's like, I don't know how she does it. But she's very imposing. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but she's a very powerful, imposing woman. She's so strong. That was tough. Being around Lorene could be challenging at first. Now, not so much, but at first it was. And I think for me, another big part was I had a, how do I put this? I had a hard time with Charlie Kreider. That, I'm trying to think of a way to put this word this won't bite me in the ass later.
It's just me and you talking. Don't worry about it.
Charlie Kreider, I felt like should have more to say.
Yeah.
And our correspondence started when he was still in prison for murder. And then he got out and I met him. And I get very frustrated because I don't want to go out on a limb and say, I think he should be a suspect or he knows something. I don't know what he knows, but I wish.
So to the people watching this, how is Charlie involved in the story?
Charles Kreider, he was the best friend of Danny Freeman. They were together in the marijuana business together. According to him, there might have been some meth business involved, but we're not sure. And Charlie Kreider he fell off the radar. He came on the radar back in 2000, I want to say 5 or 7, maybe even 12. I don't even know. He came in much later, after he was convicted of killing a woman up in Chautauqua, Kansas, where these 3 men that we now know are the killers are from. Phil Welch, Pennington, and Busick. They were all from Chautauqua. Charles was also from Chautauqua. He was also a meth addict, and he killed Judith Schrum. She was a local cafeteria woman. He worked at the same school, the Chautauqua school over there, and he was in prison. And they started questioning him when a tip came forward that the girls were buried on his property in a well. That's about the time I came into this story, was when they were searching that well in Chautauqua, Kansas. He lived a rock's throw away from Pennington. There's a lot I can't get into about this, but that was hard talking to him. Talking to him was hard.
Yeah.
Talking to him was hard.
You're looking somebody in the face that, and he's a killer. He's been to jail for it, right? You know what I mean? You're talking to somebody who has murdered a woman, and you think that they have some knowledge at a minimum on another case. It's got to be a difficult face-to-face conversation with somebody, to not blow your lid on them, right?
Yeah. No, it's not about blowing my lid. I was scared. They
go hand in hand.
Yeah. I met him. We did meet. In fact, we met at the very place where Pennington once lived, and I didn't know that at the time. It was really wild. And it was hard. I was scared.
So what was interesting to me is throughout this book, you interject a lot of that yourself, right? Like very earlier in the book, you were like, oh, there's something about feeling like the chills of the prairie or whatever. And I've never read a book done in that style. And it added a lot, where the author was writing a nonfiction story, but then they're interjecting themselves. It was usually more of a narrative, it's more of just like, these are what happened, this is what this person said, but you were really including your thoughts and feelings, what you were seeing, and it added another layer to the book. And I've never read another book done that way. And at first, I was a little confused by it, and then it really, as the book went on, it was like an onion. It was like more layers coming to it. It really added a lot to it. How did you decide to do that?
That actually wasn't a choice. I mean, I think a lot of it came natural because I'm a novelist,
Yeah.
I write in the first person, usually as a fiction character, but I'm very used to writing in the first person. So it came very natural to me. However, it wasn't something I intended. I really didn't want to be so into the story. And I was always unsure on how to write the story. Should I do it in the third person, in the first person, past tense, present tense? How are we going to do this? So there was a lot of back and forth about how, stylistically we were going to write this. And my publishers really wanted me to put myself in it. And that's the bottom line. And I think it was used more as a literary device. And I'll explain that, because in the story of Laura and Ashley, there is no ending. And we knew that before we even wrote Once Upon a Time. We knew that there was no ending, that the girls hadn't been found. So over here, you have this parallel. You have the girl's case. You have the story, the heart of the story with no ending. So I think the publishers, what they had in mind was, let's do a parallel over here with Anne's narrative and her anecdotes, with Jax's narrative and anecdotes, whatever, and give that an ending so that there's at least some semblance of closure where we can't have any over here. So I think it was used more as a device than this. I didn't have a need to talk about myself. I didn't even have a desire to talk about myself. A lot of people hate that in the book, and I don't care. I don't really care, but I think it's so rewarding when people do appreciate it. And one of the most rewarding things in writing a book is when somebody writes you and says, wow, this spoke to me. And I've had so many people write me saying, wow, I suffer from anxiety and depression. I understood what you were going through. This is something that I go through. Thank you for making me not feel so alone. And that's like the most rewarding, beautiful thing. Like, even if it reached out to one person, I don't care about the other 1,000 people who say they hated it. Right. You know what I mean? So I'm so thankful that it has reached people. And I do like talking about mental health in the writing community, especially. And we look at people like Michelle McNamara. We look at people like James Renner. We look at people like Capote, Gray Smith, all these people who have struggled in the pursuit of writing a story. So I feel very honored to talk about that. And I'm glad that that's something that we are talking about now.
That's cool, man. So we're getting, I have all day, but I don't want to keep you all day. I know you have 10,000 interviews to do. I just want to ask you a couple quick questions. What has been the coolest response you've gotten? Like, has any celebrity or writer, anyone who you were like, holy shit, this person liked my book, or like retweeted or tweeted something or about the story?
Patton Oswalt retweeted it when Robert Graysmith. Yeah. So Robert Graysmith, he wrote Zodiac, and I was on cloud effing 9 when he, said all these beautiful things about the book.
Yeah.
And at one point he compared it to I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which was written by
I just watched that like 2 weeks ago.
I have not seen it. Don't even tell me. Okay. Don't even tell me. So I tagged Patton Oswalt, and he wrote, wow. He retweeted it. I'm like, oh my God, look at that. That was really amazing. But I am so thankful for everyone who's said something nice about the book. I mean, I'm just so appreciative. You can be a big celebrity, or you can be the guy next door. You can be my dad. It's just it's just really nice to hear.
Yeah, that's awesome. But no, Patton Oswalt's a good one, especially like after just watching that. You gotta check it out. You guys are HBO Max cousins now, so you got to you're on the same gang.
I think we sent him a copy of the book. I think we sent him a copy of the book, but we didn't hear back from him. So that's okay. That's okay.
All right. And so, what's the Facebook page that people can find the page for the girls at? What is it?
That's Find Laura Bible. And Laura spelled Lauria. The I is silent. So Find Laura Bible. And then, so that's on Facebook, and that's run by the Bible family themselves, Lorene Bible and Lisa Broderick, who's Laura's cousin. Both of them are fabulous. They, I think that was the biggest part of this story. I think that that's what opened the can of worms when they started really, reopening this case in 2016 was this Facebook page. It's opened a lot of doors for families. So check it out. You can go there with your tips. There's also a lot of sentiment up there. There's updates on the case as their story continues. So check it out.
Speaking of the Bibles, one last question I did have for you, and you don't have to answer this if it's more private, but do the Bibles have any resentment towards the Freemans for this happening? Like, so I have a daughter who's going to be 14, and if she went and slept over someone's house who I later found out may have been a drug dealer and she was killed because of it, I would have resentment in that direct. I know that I would. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. You know, I mean, of course, I can't speak for them.
Yeah.
But what I can say is that the Bibles are forgiving people. This summer, I sat with them in court with Ronnie Busick. We were all together.
Yeah.
And Lorene went up there and spoke to Ronnie Busick, a known rapist and murderer, and said, I forgive you. So I feel like, I mean, I can't tell you whether or not she, you know, has resentment towards Danny. I cannot say, but I feel like if she can forgive the actual murderer, you know, she's a merciful, forgiving woman, a better woman than I am.
I was gonna say, I can't imagine that level of, I don't even know what you would call it, man. I can't even imagine that. But Jax, dude, I really appreciate you. Where can people get you on social media?
Real Jax Miller. I'm mostly on Facebook, but I'm on the Twitter and the Instagram, whatever's.
Yeah.
I'm all around. It's real Jax Miller all across the board. So.
Cool. Yeah. So I found you on Twitter. I'm on a social media break, but then I did a Twitter just for the podcast. I was like, my social media detox has led to my rebirth of reading. So if I was still
good
obsessed with my Instagram, and I got a huge thing on Instagram and like on Facebook, I may never read the book. So to me, it was getting rid of that has led to me getting back into a ton of reading. So check her out. Real Jax Miller all across the board. You can get the book anywhere. I got it at locally. It's Books A Million, a store here, but you know, you can get it online wherever you shop, and you can get it on your Kindle. You can get the documentary on HBO Max. I definitely recommend checking that out for sure.
Check it out.
Thank you, dude. It was great to meet you. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yes, you too. Anytime. Right. I really appreciate it. You take care now.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
This place is a breeding ground for murder.
The 16-year-old girls were never heard from again.
This has hung over this town for almost 2 decades.
We're only scratching the surface here. They did not search for the girls.
Nobody will talk.
How do people miss this?
This is something that literally haunts you every day.
We need to find these girls and bring them home.
Hell in the Heartland, new series